Well, hello everyone. Ogre27kain here today, and we're going to do a review of Record of Lodoss War, Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth for the Nintendo Switch. Let's do a real quick overview and figure out what this game is all about. So this game is a Metroidvania much in the vein of Castlevania Symphony of the Night. In the most recent Nintendo Indie Direct, they showed off a game from the same studio called Blade Chimera. It really inspired me to go back and play this game through a second time. So, a few spoiler warnings. I need to let you know that I do show off a good part of the mid-section to this game, stages 3 and 4. There are 6 stages, but it is a true Metroidvania and they all interlock and interchange between each other. So let's start off with the gameplay. Well, in true Metroidvania fashion, this game is built around exploration and combat. The combat is very fine-tuned and requires you to be very precise, and the exploration is excellent and interlocks all the world into one big cohesive map. On top of that, there is no wasted space. You will not see anything that you can't reach if you don't put your mind to it. On top of that gameplay element, you also have a feature with the magic where you switch back and forth between fire and wind. This is very reminiscent of a game called Ikaruga, if you're familiar with that, and it forces you not only to dodge, but to utilize these magics to your advantage. As per the Castlevania side of things, you have a ton of weapon variation as well as a ton of magic variation. All of them interlocked well and provide you with a good set of strategy. There are enough different kinds of magic, too, that you will want to switch between them and see which one works best. Sometimes what I figured wouldn't work on a boss at all worked better than my original strategy. I love this because it includes the magic and makes it cohesive. On top of that, your healing is tied into that, so as you're more aggressive, you will gain these levels as you see in the top of the screen here, and when you reach level 3, you can use that to replenish your health. It's a slow replenishment and it requires you to dodge and stay nimble on your feet while this is happening. So let's dig in a little more now to the story. Well, the story in this game sees you as Deedlit, a knight of Lodoss, and you're taken to this realm to figure out what's going on. You don't fully understand it, but you do realize that there's everybody from your past and everybody from around you. You think of some of them as your allies and you utilize some as friends and foes, but as you get through the game, you kind of realize that there's something up. I don't really want to spoil too much on that aspect of the story because that is really truly the big twist to it and is what's most important to the story. Honestly, the story is kind of the weakest link to this game, and that's not a bad thing as the story is very good and does its job. I was expecting a lot more coming from the franchise that it is. The Record of Lodoss War is pretty old now, and one of my favorite Dreamcast games is in the same line. Granted, that story wasn't well done either, but as I said, this does come from an old anime and comic book line, and they had plenty to draw from. That aside though, the story will do what you expect it to do. It will keep you involved, and it will keep you to see the end. The last thing I really need to mention about the story is that if you are a completionist, you may want to see the entire map through and collect everything you can, because it does impact what you may view. It's not very big, but it does have some minor impacts to it, some minor play to it. So let's move on now to the next category, the combat. Well, the combat in this game is what you expect from a Metroidvania. But I do have to mention that it is extremely well done. The collision detection is spot on. I never had a frustrating death or a death that was caused by something that I thought was not my fault. I do have to mention as well that the frame rate is very steady, which helps this combat along. This is the kind of game that you want to be very fluid, as the frantic nature of it can cause you to kind of fly around all over the room and even lose your character from time to time. Now, you do level up as a character, but the enemies in the game do not, so it does make it nice and advantageous to go back to previous areas to not only level up if you need to, power level, but to also explore and find things you couldn't before. I'll admit it, I got to some areas and some of the enemies were so aggressive that I didn't dare exploring until I was 100% secure in what I was able to accomplish, and if I was close enough to a save point to make it even worth my time to explore. That doesn't say anything negative or bad about it, it just means that the combat really focuses on all of its effort in every room. You don't go into a room just thinking you're gonna cheese everything and walk out of it scot-free. I really had to work for everything I tried to accomplish in every room in this game. That being said, it gave me an enormous feeling of accomplishment to get through each room and to get to each save point. I really felt like, although this is not a very long game, I spent a lot of time just working through some of the puzzles in very simple rooms. So let's move on to graphics and animations now. So although this game is a 2D Metroidvania with a side-scroller aesthetic, the art style is absolutely gorgeous and the animation quality is top-notch. As you can see too, the frame rate is very steady. I personally never had any issues with that, and I never had any issues with performance in any of the bosses or crazy rooms going on. That's kind of a huge deal in these kind of games, especially on the Switch, as some games such as Moonscars really didn't perform terribly well when all of these enemies were barreling down on you. The only negative side that I can see to the graphical quality is because it causes you to flip between your magics back and forth, it's very easy to get lost in what's actually happening to you on screen. There was many a times when I thought that it was supposed to be fire and I was using wind, but as I figured these things out and I learned the enemies, these problems went away. None of these problems persisted past the first or second meeting that I had with any of these monsters or bosses. Now, given that this game is a couple years old, it really excites me to see what they're going to do with Blade Chimera. The animation quality in the video that they showed in the Nintendo Direct looked even more buttery smooth. So I'm highly impressed at this tiny little team and what they're able to accomplish. And I have to say that this game is graphically more impressive to me than Bloodstained. So let's hit controls and audio now. So let's start off with audio first, and I'm going to show a boss fight here which I feel best demonstrates the quality of the audio and the tension that you get, the feeling and the emotion behind the fight. So here we go, let's check it out. Pretty freaking awesome if you ask me. Let's talk about the controls now. And the controls in this game are very buttery smooth. They work absolutely flawlessly, and there's no issues as far as latency that I can tell. I never had any issues with anything other than learning how a weapon moved. If a weapon was slow, I had to figure that out. If a weapon was fast, I had to figure that out. But these are not control issues with the game itself, but rather how I learned and functioned. So let's do the conclusion now. Well, in conclusion, this turned out to be a much better Castlevania clone than Bloodstained. I was really excited for Bloodstained, and I thought that was going to be the end-all, the penultimate of Castlevania Metroidvania style, but this game really impressed me, and this game kind of came out of nowhere. I highly recommend this. I know it's a little expensive now on the secondhand market, and I don't think you can get it from Red Art Games' store anymore. But if you do come across a physical copy, this is one I highly recommend in getting, and even if you have to play it digitally, it's not a bad pickup. I think it's still pretty cheap, around $15 to $20 most of the time, and I'm sure there's always a good sale that you can find. That's gonna do it for today's review, folks. I really hope you enjoyed it, because I did. So thank you for watching today's video. It was a blast to make. I upload every single Monday If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day. This is ogre27kain signing out.